I completed my fantasy draft. And at worst case scenario possible, I got the first overall pick. Now, me personally, I can make do with a lower pick. But first overall gives you free reign to select anybody you want. And when you're able to select anybody you want, you have to be careful not to pick the wrong guy, because you can get anybody, and this guy is going to carry your team the whole season. And I was worried about picking the wrong guy and letting another great player slip by, because this has got to be the guy that you're expecting to get the top fantasy numbers, not only at his position, but possibly in the entire league all year long. So I did not want first overall, but I got first overall. I would have rather had like 6 or something lower. I wanted something in the bottom 5 because I have plenty of players I'd be willing to go for, and it would have been easy for me to narrow down. I would have been happy with any of them. It would have been easier for me to choose if there was less of a selection. Plus, then in the later rounds, I get to go first. Because the problem with getting the first overall pick is that in fantasy draft, it flips. And so, yes, I got first overall, but then I don't pick again till 20. So with the first overall pick in my fantasy draft, I took Lesean Mccoy. Now me, when I go to fantasy drafts, the first people I always pick up are quarterbacks and receivers. Usually, in the first 2 rounds, that's what I want, because it's hard to get a good did I say receivers? No, I meant halfbacks. Quarterbacks and halfbacks, because it's hard to get a premier halfback in the NFL nowadays. And quarterbacks, there's only so many top tier guys that you can count on to get you 20, 30 points a game. So I decided to go halfback because there's only a handful of premier rushers who you know are going to get the bulk of the carries for their team every single week, and you know they're going to do a lot with those carries. You know, the Yahoo had him ranked in the top 4 in this order: Arian Foster, Ray Rice, Ryan Matthews, Lesean Mccoy. I had him ranked in this order: Ray Rice, Lesean McCoy, Arian Foster. Then I had quarterbacks Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers. I decided I'd go halfback first because there are plenty of great QBs who can get you good numbers. None of them as consistently as Brees and Foster, but still well enough that you can get by. There are no other halfbacks in the league who I trust more than Foster, Rice, and McCoy. Matthews, I'm not going to go there yet. I still feel he has just a little bit to prove to me. And, we'll see what he does with a full season as the guy for San Diego. But for now, I decided I'd go with McCoy. Why? I love Ray Rice. He's one of my favorites, but he did not find the end zone a lot. And the truth is, he's got probably the worst offense around him. I say that because Flacco, he is underachieving to this point. And yes, there's a great O-line in front of Rice, but there's not much of a passing game to distract from them. That could be different this year. With a full offseason under their belt, the chemistry will hopefully have improved, and you might see the Ravens airing it out a lot more. You could see Flacco turn into an elite quarterback, put up Brady-like numbers. But I decided it was a safer bet to go with Foster or McCoy. I chose McCoy because Foster, he's got Ben Tate as a handcuff. Yes, Foster is number 1, but Ben Tate could still vulture a good number of carries from him, including those along the goal line. And don't forget that you have Matt Schaub, who is a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback, throwing to guys like Andre Johnson and Owen Daniels. So that passing game could do well enough but at the same time, a lot of teams won't be scared to stack the box. So I just decided to go with McCoy because he's the guy that can get involved in the game no matter where they are. He's a tough running back, and the Eagles are not afraid to give him the ball no matter what the situation. If they're up by 30 points, which in a lot of games they probably will be, they're going to keep pounding it out. He does not have Ben Tate on the roster. He doesn't have a handcuff who's going to be vulturing carries from him. I expect him to get at 20 to 30 touches a game at least. And if they're down by a lot of points, they can still run the ball with him, and he can get involved in the passing game. But with the Texans and with the Ravens, they've got enough weapons in the passing attack. They're not afraid that they might not use their checkdowns as much. That's part of the reason that Rice had those huge numbers he had as a receiver. And so with McCoy, I think that he's probably in the best scenario. He's got the best option to almost repeat what he did last year. The touchdowns, he had 20 touchdowns last year, 17 rushing, 3 receiving. It's hard to see him mimicking those numbers, but I think he could still put up some decent numbers. I believe he was the best value available. And plus, if you look at the schedule, the teams that they face, I think that McCoy faces much tougher defenses throughout the seasons. So the matchups really put him over the top. Because Ray Rice in his division alone, you've got the Steelers, the Browns, and the Cincinnati Bengals. Those teams had good defenses that put up some decent numbers last season. They may not have been playmaking defenses, they may not have had top fantasy numbers, but they did a decent job stopping their opponents' offenses. And so I decided to go with McCoy for my first overall pick. And I was hoping that it would be possible a quarterback would be available when it got back to me, but 18 picks later, there were no number one quarterbacks left. All the top tier guys, Brees, Rodgers, Brady, they were all gone. I almost got Tom Brady. He got picked right before me. My pick was coming up and I'm like, okay, Tom Brady's still available. I definitely have to grab him. I don't even need a backup QB because this guy put up amazing numbers last year and he still has a great core of receivers with Gronk and Welker to throw to, and now adding Brendan Lloyd into that mix, he's gonna have another big year. He disappeared, so I decided, who am I gonna get? I had the next 2 picks. I decided, well, let's bulk up the receiving cores since there are some good ones available. Calvin Johnson went 2nd overall, which to me, I won't pick a receiver in the first round. It's too hard to trust him because last year I did have Calvin Johnson. He had 5 straight games with touchdowns where he was like the leading receiver in the league, but he also had games where he only got me 2 points, 4 points. And even though I had him as an every game starter, he did lose some games for me. So I decided I would wait till at least the 2nd or maybe even 3rd round, depending on who is available. So with the 20th and the 21st overall picks, I picked up Rob Gronkowski and Victor Cruz. And I have already had people asking me for trades, trying to get Gronk and Cruz over on their teams. So at least from their perspective, I made some good picks with those. Rounding out the rest of my list, the rest of my picks were Jeremy Macklin, Darren Sproles, Tony Romo, Phillip Rivers. I selected them because we were getting later in the rounds, and I needed quarterbacks who I could trust. Romo had over 4,000 passing yards last year, threw for over 30 touchdowns. Rivers, if you take away the 30 turnovers, he had a pretty decent season, and I highly doubt that he's ever going to have that bad a year again. That was a career year for him. That was the worst he'd ever done. He just could not protect the ball. I believe he will do better this season. And after that, I took Jason Witten, which you could argue that with Gronk as my starter, you don't need that safety net. But since Witten was available in such a late round, he makes a fantastic safety net. How many consecutive seasons has he had 70 plus receptions on the year? And then after that, we rounded off with Torrey Smith as a reserve, the Philadelphia defense, Dan Bailey, Jahvid Best, Robbie Gould, and the New York Giants defense. Now, Philly and New York, you can argue they weren't the best defenses, but I did select them in later rounds, and they were the best with what was available when you consider the talent on their roster as well as the schedule that they had. Any other questions, go ahead and ask me. I'm really looking forward to the season. It's going to be a lot of fun.